Welcome to ConverSapien, the podcast all about having conversations with interesting Homo sapiens. I am your host and favorite of the species, Caleb Wildman.
And I want to thank you for making ConverSapien a part of your day. This week, things are getting a little spooky, hence the
Voice pitch shifter.
I have on paranormal investigator Kristy Sumner, who leads a team of all women paranormal investigators who all also have advanced degrees who go into haunted places and do investigations. So yeah, we're going to be talking ghosts and demons. Woo! How exciting. But before we get into that, let me remind you all, my precious members of the Sapien Nation. Yes, I do have to laugh every time I say the word Sapien Nation, that we are in growth mode right now. So I'm going to need you to, in exchange for this episode, share any of our now 7 episodes of ConverSapien with one of your friends, or put it on your social media, or just do something to help a brother out. We are trying to get this ball rolling. You guys have known from day one that it is our goal to eventually take over the world. We cannot do that just sitting around on our hands. So please do me a big Flava Flav and recommend ConverSapien to someone this week. If you get a chance, do it. As always, a huge thank you to our supporters, our patrons who are supporting the show through Patreon.com. If you would like to help us out in that way, you can donate as little as $3 a month, or even less. You can put your own amount into the donation spot if you would like. All of that is immensely helpful for keeping this show running. There are some costs associated with making ConverSapien happen, and any and all help that we can get through the Patreon page is tremendously helpful for offsetting some of that cost. That said, if you are unable to support the show in that way, I totally understand, but you are able to support the show just by continuing to listen and by remembering your mission, which is to share ConverSapien with a friend, right? Don't forget, or I will sick one of the ghostly demons that we talk about today on you.
Don't make me break out this voice. That could be bad for you.
Coming up right after this phantasmagoric prehensile stinger, we will be talking about all things paranormal, so stay tuned and check it out.
You're listening to
ConverSapien.
I'm here with Kristy Sumner of Soul Sisters Paranormal, is an all-women's team of paranormal investigators. How are you today, Miss Kristy?
I am fantastic. Caleb, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm doing really great now that you're on here. I've been excited about this. It's been in the works for a couple of weeks, and I've just been thinking, how is this going to go, and how do we explore this topic? Because it's so different from what I've done so far. You know, I've had like a developmental psychologist on, had an art teacher on, and now we're going to paranormal investigations.
Absolutely. And I do get that a lot, actually. You know, it's a little bit different than what we normally do, but let's get into it.
So, first things first. Mm-hmm. When we say paranormal investigator, obviously that sounds like someone who investigates the paranormal, but can you give sort of a little bit more background on what that entails?
For most people, paranormal investigations is exactly that. You go in and you're looking for some type of unexplainable paranormal phenomena or event, either a spirit or, you know, in some cases, people go in and look for demons, if they want to call it that, or negative energy, if you want to call it that. What my group, Soul Sisters Paranormal, does is we actually have a 2-tiered process. The first thing that we do is we actually want to go in and investigate and research the historical locations that we get to visit. So a Civil War fort, a Revolutionary War fort, an axe murder house. And we really like to delve into the history of those locations. And then we want to couple our paranormal investigations with that historical element. And so to your point, we go in and we look for things that we can't explain. We go in with a very scientific mindset. So we look for environmental factors that could be contributing to what people think is paranormal, i.e. light pollution, noise pollution. Is there an airplane traffic, train traffic, anything like that could explain what somebody would perceive as paranormal? Absent any of that, then we will call it unexplainable. Things that after we've controlled for everything else, we just cannot explain the reasoning behind why they were occurring. So, for example, when we went to the Exchange Hotel in Gordonsville, Virginia, we captured the voice of a small child. There are no children in our group, and there was no child on the property. So that is something that I call unexplainable. I do not know what originated that voice.
Right.
So we'll put that down as unexplainable.
So when you capture a voice like that, excuse me, do you use a particular type of equipment? How are those things captured?
We do have a variety of equipment, and the first thing that we go in with that we never go into an investigation without is our voice recorders. We have 10 of them. They're just Sony dictation voice recorders, because I feel that the evidence that is the hardest for me to debunk, let's say, is a voice, a voice out of thin air, like a child's voice. Sometimes when we capture shadow figures or light anomalies, those are things that I can explain away. But for the most part, a voice emanating out of the darkness, I can't explain. So voice recorders, we take night vision video cameras. We have 20 of those that we set up in different places on the property that we're investigating. We have laser grids that we use in conjunction with those night vision video cameras. We have different pieces of handheld equipment that are designed to measure different things, such as electromagnetic energy or static electricity. We take those pieces of handheld equipment with us as well, and just use them at various points during the investigation.
Well, when you say laser grid, is that like some sort of motion sensor thing, or
not that sophisticated? It's okay. Basically, just those essentially those things you can get for parties that you just throw out on the wall, and it just puts out a laser grid.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So that's what we use. And the idea behind that is if we set up a laser grid next to a night vision video camera, and something passes through the beams of the laser grid, again, that's something that I can't explain. We've had that happen in several of the locations that we've gone to. We'll set up a night vision video camera and we'll capture a shadow, an unexplained shadow, and it basically cuts the beams, and it allows us to see something that moves, again, that we couldn't explain.
Right. I was looking in some of your videos, and there was a Florida private address that you guys went to, and you guys went into a closet. I think it said that you went into a closet in the write-up, and that you immediately felt uneasy. You guys step out of the closet, and then the video starts with you holding some device, and you say, are we supposed to go in the closet? There's no response. And then it's like, are we not supposed to go to the closet? And it immediately goes from green to red, like pretty profoundly. What is that device?
Okay. And thank you for watching our clips, by the way. So that device is called a K2 meter. And what it does is it measures electromagnetic energy. So it's actually it was designed for electricians. So it's actually a valid piece of equipment. And so when we go to a location that has the power turned off, and that device starts to, what we say, alarm, we have it goes, for those who don't know, it has a light scale, and it goes from green, which is really no energy, to red, which is high energy. And we go to a location that has no power on, and we don't have any devices on our person that emanates electricity, and that device starts going off. That's something that is very hard for me to explain. So when in that particular location, there was no power on in the house. And so when I stepped into that closet, it was something that I felt a little bit uneasy. It felt like a cold feeling, if you will. And then when I stepped out, that K2 meter did start going off, which again is pretty profound, because there is no electricity. It should not be going off. And then also, say we do find an electrical current somewhere, like if we hold it up to an outlet or something like that, it will go consistently. It will consistently stay powered on to red. When I back off of it, it will go back to green. So theoretically, if I'm standing in an open room and there's no spike on that device, I wouldn't expect it to ever spike because there's no energy acting upon it. So when that happens, again, that's something that's very hard for us to explain.
So does this work on the theory that the paranormal entities, or whatever you want to call them, spirits, ghosts, whatever, are basically made up of electromagnetic energy?
It does.
Okay.
It does. And so we actually use it for that purpose. And, for me, I do have compelling pieces of evidence like that. And I do think, personally, I think that when we die, because we are made up of energy, that has to go somewhere, because energy can't be created or destroyed. So it has to go somewhere. And so for those spirits that are what I would consider closer to the veil, let's say, between this and whatever's next, those entities can communicate with us, and we use this tool as one method for them to do so. I'm not saying that every spirit that we encounter will set off the K2. Some don't approach it, or they'll stand back and we'll get an EVP from them. And we can investigate that same location tonight and not get anything. So it really is an interesting field to be involved in, because it's not something that can actually be measured, if you will. So, for example, you'll hear a lot of people say, well, I'm a paranormal expert. I will never call myself a paranormal expert, because it is a field that it's not a field that we can explain. We're all dealing with theories on this. So like I said before, I can go to one location and another investigator can go to that same location and not get the same evidence. So we very much are dealing with theory, and that is one of them. Back to your point, that energy of spirits will manipulate that device.
What does EVP stand for?
It stands for electronic voice phenomena, and basically what that is we set, like I said, we set up those voice recorders, and it's a voice or a movement or a sound that we capture on the voice recorder that we either did not hear in the moment, we did hear in the moment, or we weren't present and something spoke into the voice recorder. So back to my example of the Exchange Hotel in Gordonsville, Virginia, again, that was a Civil War hospital, and we left one of those voice recorders on the bed in one of the mock rooms that they had set up. And we were all in another part of the building, and we captured that child's voice. He said, "Hi, this is my bed." So that is what we call an EVP. It's a voice that we don't know where it came from. It appeared on our voice recorder, and it's just something that we can't explain.
Right. I noticed on your website you get a common question of why can't I hear what you're hearing, or what the captions say you're hearing, right? And you on the website you guys say, well, when we sit and review this stuff, we're sitting in a dead quiet room. The volume's all the way up so loud that you can hear like the noise floor. I mean, you're just hearing a buzz of audio. And so these things really stick out to us. Whereas, when you're listening to it on your computer at home, you may not really have it up to a volume that you can actually hear it. And I'll say, I was looking at the Fort Mifflin place in particular, because it seemed like you had a whole conversation.
we did. Fort Mifflin is an amazing place. But get to your question?
Yeah. And some of I didn't turn it way up, but I need to. These are actually like audio file headphones, so I need to go back and do all that. I kind of like to dabble in audio and stuff like that. But some of them were on first sight, honestly not very convincing, and then there's other ones that are like, oh wow, I don't need to sit in a dark room and turn it up to hear that. The one in particular was, you said to this spirit that you had left cigarettes, I think, and water for them.
Correct.
And it responds with thank you, and it's a very crystal clear thank you. How did that story, well, I guess we can get into what the Fort Mifflin haunt was and just open that whole can of worms, and then maybe get to how we wound up with exchanging water and cigarettes.
Okay. Well, let me get to, I'm going to get to your question in a very long narrative for just a second.
Hey, I got to the question a very long roundabout way.
No, that's fine.
So you're all good.
Okay. So let me just kind of backtrack just a second and kind of explain to you how we do an investigation. So we, like I said before, we'll find a location that we want to investigate, primarily for the history. And so Fort Mifflin is a location that is just rich in history. It was a Revolutionary War fort. It was used during the Civil War to house both Union and Confederate prisoners in what they call the casemates. So the casemates were designed as underground, not so much, bunkers. I'll use the term bunkers. Underground bunkers to house munitions during the Revolutionary War. During the Civil War, they housed prisoners. And that one in particular, and we'll get to that in just a second, was a solitary confinement cell. So we'll go to a place like Fort Mifflin, and the first thing that we do is we take a day tour because we want to kind of scope out, where we can leave some of our stationary equipment during the night, and we want to know a little bit about the history of the location. So we'll talk to a volunteer or a docent to see, where they've had experiences or, anything germane to our investigation that we need to know about. And we also look at things like I spoke about the pollution, the noise pollution, the air or the light pollution. Right. Where would those things come from during the night? So then we get there the night of the investigation, and we'll set up all of our what we call stationary equipment. So our night vision video cameras, our voice recorders, we'll leave them in very specific places on the property. So even though we're not there, we've got eyes and ears recording for us, recording video and audio for us. And those will run throughout the entire night, the entire investigation. So for that particular location, again, that was called Casemate 11, and it was a solitary confinement cell used during the Revolutionary War. And one of the prisoners in that cell was a gentleman by the name of William Howe. And he was tried for treason. He was found guilty. So they put him in that solitary confinement cell before they hung him at the fort. And so when we do our background research, we try to look for any individuals that would have a story like that again are germane to the story that we can ask very specific questions of. And so when we find a story like that, we bring in what we call trigger items. And those are items that we feel could elicit some type of a response. And so for that situation, we figured he was in solitary confinement. Water would be a good thing. Cigarettes would be a good thing. And we also took some food. We left a piece of bread down in there because we figured, hey, solitary confinement. So we took that down in there and we set up our stationary equipment. We set up a voice recorder, a night vision video camera, and a laser grid in that location. And then we walked away and we left it just to sit for a while. And so then we came back. It was just myself and another investigator, Cara. And so we went down in there, and it's a very small space. Only about 4 people can fit in there comfortably at one time, and it's subterranean. So it's about 6 feet under the ground. So I can verify that we were the only 2 people in there because you see us step over the camera, and that's the only way into this room. So you can I can show you that there's nobody else in there. So when I said, did you see what we left you? We left you some water and some cigarettes, and we got the thank you. That was picked up on every piece of equipment that we had running that moment. So to your point, that's a very compelling piece of evidence to us. And again, something that I can't explain because Cara and I were the only 2 there. You can see us on the camera. Our mouths aren't moving, and we have no men with us in the group. We're an all-female group. So to come up with a man's voice was very compelling for us.
Was that something that you could physically hear, or is it something that just, like you're saying, electronic voice phenomena?
Electronic voice phenomena, yes.
Yeah, is that something that occurred after the fact where you go back and listen to it and you can hear it?
In that instance, we heard it.
You did hear it?
Yes, we did hear it. And you can actually hear Cara say, if you continue on with that clip, you can hear her say, did you hear that voice? So yes, we heard that in the moment. And that we get that in a lot of the locations that we go to. We will hear things in the moment, and then we go back and verify that on our equipment. And so those to us are the most compelling pieces when you hear them in the moment, and then all of the equipment also picks that up.
Sure.
But we do have those instances where, we'll just be walking. So for example, in Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, there was some instances where we're just walking from one location to another, and we always have a voice recorder with us. So one of us is always holding it. And so, you just listen to our conversation, and then intertwined with that conversation is another voice, a male's voice that we don't know where it came from. So we get that a lot during our investigation. So I'd say probably 50% of our investigations, we can capture a voice just essentially walking with us, or just kind of jumping into our conversation that we don't hear in the moment, but we'll pick up when we do the audio review.
Right. Have you ever taken that same equipment and put it in like a place that's not has no stories attached, is not haunted, and seen what the results are in that case.
Yeah, and we've actually taken it to locations where people perceive that there is a haunting and we get nothing.
Yeah.
So kind of what we do, because we are really research-based in our approach, again, we're an all-female group, and all of us actually have advanced degrees. So we've been in academia our entire lives. So it's one of the things that we really pride ourselves on is to go in and really research these locations. And so, for example, we had an individual call us, and he was convinced that his new business that he opened was haunted. He said my night vision, and his whole basis for that was his night vision video cameras during the night when nobody was there, they would go on and off. And so that's what he was basing this on. And so he said, can you come in and do an investigation? And we did. So to picture it, his storefront was all glass. He had some mirrors running down the side. And so it was a kind of a narrow, boxy store. So he had these night vision video cameras in all four corners. And so, like I said, he was convinced that things were messing with his cameras. So we went in, we took our equipment in there, and we weren't getting hits on anything. Our K2s weren't going off. Our REM pods weren't going off. None of our handheld equipment was going off. We weren't feeling anything in the moment. And so we left our night vision video cameras there to run during the night after we left. And so when I went back the next morning to collect our equipment, I asked him, I said, did your cameras go off during the night? He said, oh, yes, they were going off and on. Something was messing with them. So I said, give me those timestamps. And I cross-referenced them to our night vision video cameras. Right. And what I was finding was the way his storefront was positioned, it was in front of a median on a highway. So when cars were making a U-turn, their headlights were shining in and bouncing off of the mirror and into his night vision video camera, which was essentially turning off the night vision. And then when the car would pass, it would turn back on. And so it was consistent. Every time a car went by, this was happening. So I essentially said, just either take the mirrors down or switch the location of your night vision video cameras. And he did, and the haunting stopped. And so for us, we try to go in and find something that maybe the homeowner or the business owner didn't think about. And so in that instance, back to your question, we do take our equipment into locations where we don't get any hits or anything.
Well, that's an interesting story because when you see the haunting videos or TV shows that, maybe History Channel or someone was putting out, Discovery several years ago, Travel Channel, all those shows, I watched a couple with some roommates. I remember when one of them just came out, and the biggest counter argument is that all these people were basically victims of confirmation bias the whole time. So they go in thinking there's definitely a haunt, and then they see demons behind every corner because they're looking for them, more or less. So it's interesting to me that you guys actually have that case. Do you have any other cases where you've gone in and it's just been like, no, there's no clear evidence of a haunt?
In some of the residential locations, absolutely. Again, when somebody calls us, they, like you said, they have preset in their minds, there's something going on that I can't explain, so it must be haunted. So we will go in, like I said, and do an investigation and really kind of get to the bottom of what they think is going on, what they've seen, what they've heard, and then try to replicate that if we can through environmental means. So car lights, neighbors, dogs, wind noise, all of that. And we've have had instances where we say, it's not that, it's this. And so, when somebody approaches us, we do go in with the mindset that something else could be causing this. So we're kind of reverse of some of the media shows that are out there where, we go in and we're going to set up our equipment in the hopes of finding anything. But we're not going to be disappointed if we don't, because, we're in this for the history as well. And so, for us, we've just been very fortunate in most of the locations that we've investigated that we have captured compelling things that we just can't explain.
Yeah. So you alluded to this. Well, you didn't allude to it. You said it, but on your website it says that you guys all have high degrees. All PhDs are JDS, really. So basically, everyone's got a terminal degree. Yeah. How does a group of ladies with terminal degrees become paranormal investigators? I mean, that's such a story. It has to be. How does that happen?
Well, there is a funny story. First of all, there's three of us on the team that actually are sisters. So it's myself, my twin sister, and our younger sister. And so we actually started the team. So my twin and I have our PhDs. Michelle and Cara have their JDs, and then Kim has her master's degree. Cara is best friends with Michelle, and then Kim has been a family friend. And so what actually happened was we've all been fascinated with the paranormal. So we grew up watching different shows on television. And so we'd say to ourselves, why didn't they do this? Or why didn't they ask this question? Or why didn't they stay longer here and do this? So we said if we ever had the chance to conduct a paranormal investigation, we were going to jump on that. So we actually had a family friend who sat on the board of the West Virginia State Penitentiary in Moundsville, West Virginia, which is one of the most haunted locations in the country. And so he said, I know that you guys are going to plan a girls' trip this year. Why don't you plan to come up to Moundsville, West Virginia and stay the night in the prison as a girls' trip?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so we did. We did. And
the natural, beach, haunted prisons.
Right. Why be drinking Mai Tais on the beach when we can be, going through November in West Virginia in a haunted prison. But that's what we did. And it was a very rudimentary investigation. We had some digital cameras. We had a couple voice recorders, some very just off-the-shelf night vision video cameras. Didn't really do a whole lot with that. But we left that experience with such compelling evidence that we really decided from that point on, we wanted to pursue this. We wanted to make this basically a glorified hobby, if you will. But we wanted to bring some professionalism, as we felt we could, into a community that is pretty much seen as a subculture. And that would be the paranormal community. So we decided to formalize. We came up with the name Soul Sisters Paranormal. We had our logo made, our theme music, because we really kind of wanted to elevate paranormal investigations in a style that we felt would be professional or lend some professional credence to paranormal investigations. Because, when you tell somebody you're a paranormal investigator, they either look at you like you have three heads or they want to tell you their ghost story. And So that really is our story. It's one of those where it was just that first investigation. That night we were capturing footsteps that we couldn't explain. We had a cell door slam on us.
Wow.
We were hearing voices again that we couldn't explain. And then Michelle at one point had her hair tugged in one of the subterranean rooms there at West Virginia State Penitentiary. And it was fascinating. It was absolutely fascinating because we really kind of wanted to see if we could add to the paranormal portfolio, if you will, of evidence, and it's actually been an amazing ride. We started that in 2013. We really formalized in 2014. The investigation was in 2013, and we've been able to investigate some of the most haunted places in the country, and just have a ball doing it.
Yeah. How do you go about selecting a place to investigate?
A lot of it is due to the history. They've just been places on bucket lists of ours that we wanted to go to. So, for example, the Villisca Axe Murder House out in Iowa, the Lizzie Borden House in Massachusetts, the Fort Mifflin was a place that we were always fascinated with. And so a lot of it has to do with the historical significance, because we feel that while paranormal media shows in popular media, they do a really good job of highlighting that paranormal investigators exist, but they do us a disservice really because they don't really highlight what I feel are the important aspects of paranormal investigations, and that is the history of these locations. Because without the history, you're not going to have that paranormal element, and we're losing those places. And so for me to elevate that narrative, that historical narrative, into something that our audience would enjoy, that is our main drive. So we base our location selection on some place that has a very cool historical story that not a lot of people may know about, like, for example, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, or the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, to bring some different facts and figures and history into our story, and then coupling that with our paranormal investigations. That's really what we try to do. And so that is really the driving factor behind our investigation selection. And as well as, we want to kind of validate what other paranormal groups have found. So those investigations are what I call our commercial investigations, i.e. those that we go to and we investigate, and that they've already been investigated by other groups. But we also have private and residential investigations where we'll go into homes or businesses, and that's where we really put to use our investigation style that we learn on the commercial side, if that makes sense.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Stepping away from the evidence-based approach from the EVPs, all that stuff, when you're in a place, a haunted place, a place that you verify there's something going on, are there, do you ever just have like feelings that, I mean, obviously that would be anecdotal, but to what degree do you feel the haunt? If that makes sense.
No, it really does. It really does. It does vary with locations. For me, the one thing that really kind of stands out to me when I go to some of these locations is my left leg will start to tingle a little bit, and it kind of like if your foot falls asleep. That's kind of when I'll say, okay, I think something is here. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying I'm an empath. I'm not saying I'm a medium. I don't profess to have that skill set. But it is something that I have noticed over time doing this. When I start to feel that feeling, I can kind of say, okay, I think we're going to get some stuff tonight. I think we're going to capture some things that we can't explain. Barring that, there are some feelings of being cold. That is a legitimate feeling. The temperature will drop in the room sometimes. It's like, okay, this is interesting. Our hair being pulled is a big one. And just generally the feeling of being touched or being watched. When we go to these locations, we do really kind of set boundaries. So when we go into a room, say a Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary or a cell block, we'll say, we're here to tell your story, because we legitimately are. We're legitimately trying to make contact with any entity that wants to tell their story to us. So we'll say, we're here to tell your story. You're not allowed to hurt us. You're not allowed to come home with us. But if we give you permission, you can touch us. So pull my pant leg or pull my hair or touch me, but you're not allowed to physically hurt me. And so for us, we feel that setting those boundaries is important. And because of that, we haven't dealt with what I would classify as anything negative or demonic or anything like that. But that's generally the feelings that we get when we go to these locations. There's been moments where we've been startled, and you'll say, what the heck was that? Maybe some more choice words. But it's never been one where, we're running out screaming, because that's not what we do. But it's an interesting field to be involved with.
You just said you guys set those boundaries so you maybe don't deal with things that you said you classify as negative or demonic. But have you ever had a private resident ask you for a haunt and stumbled upon any sort of, I don't know, like Ouija board-esque activity related to anything like that?
Personally, yes. We've investigated a couple homes that, we will go in and investigate, and the evidence that we found coincides with the stories that the homeowners are telling us. And in that case, like for example, one investigation that we did, we were capturing growls. There was no animals in the house. And we had asked the homeowners to leave that night. So there were some growls that we couldn't explain, some deep male voices that we couldn't explain. So in that instance, when we find things like that, we will discuss with the homeowner what their options are and how they want to proceed. So they can either have, the house blessed. They can ask the spirits to leave themselves. We can get a demonologist in. We do have those people that we call. For us, we don't feel that we're versed enough in doing any type of demonic removal or exorcism, if you want to call it that. So we'll call in somebody who is versed in that. Like I said, a priest, a demonologist, somebody like that. In some cases, they just want validation that, it's just grandma, and, grandma hasn't bothered me. I felt that was her, and you've confirmed that it was, and she's cool. It's cool if she stays here. And sometimes they just want that validation. Yeah. But we do discuss with the homeowners how they want to proceed, and then we'll make recommendations accordingly.
If you found evidence that they were correct and there was something that they don't want there, you would then defer to a demonologist or a priest, like you just said, right? Yes,
we have people that will call, and there's several people actually in different parts of the country that will call. One interesting element that I have seen, I haven't really dealt with a demonic entity per se personally. I do have a colleague in the field. Her name is Miranda Young from Ghost Biker Explorations, and she was actually called in on a case, and the homeowner said, things are going on, and I can't really explain this. And so Miranda went in and investigated in the house, and some of the activity was just what I would say just off the chain with regard to negative energies. She would walk into the house, and she captured a voice saying, "Miranda, you're going to die." The floor
Holy
started
crap.
shaking. So she called and this investigation for her went on for about 8 months. And so in talking to the homeowners, it was discovered that they had dabbled in some what we call black magic and some different things that probably they shouldn't have been dealing with. And so she actually called in a demonologist. And so while I wasn't there, personally, through her and watching what she put out on her episode about it, it's a very intensive process to get a negative entity to move. So it took about 8 hours for the demonologist to remove the negative energy. And so it's a very labor-intensive process. And again, it's one of those things that we will defer to the experts on if we come across something like that.
Right. And not to press into that anymore, because I know you're saying that that's not your
that's fine.
particular field of expertise, but just out of curiosity, from what you do know, what do they do? You say it's a very labor-intensive process to remove a negative entity. What are there any particular steps that you're familiar with that they use to do that? What does that look like?
A lot of prayer and holy water. There is some saging of the house as well. Some different cleansing elements that they'll use, at least in the ones that I've seen. Some demonologists or priests may have a different method. But so in the ones that I've seen, it is a lot of praying. There is the sprinkling of holy water. And so for me personally, I'll just say that there's two different, what I feel are darker energies. They're the kind that I'll call negative. And those energies are those that I think at some point were human. So for example, when we go into Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary or West Virginia State Penitentiary or the old Gilchrist County Jail, I'm expecting to encounter negative energies because those guys weren't great in life. So they're probably not going to be, the best of spirits, So I'm expecting darkness on that side, but I'm not going to call it demonic. I'm just going to say it's those entities that aren't, they're not pleasant. On the other side, there's the demons, the demonic entities. Those I don't think personally, I do not feel were human in life. They never had any human experience. They are just the product of the evil and the good and evil that's in the world. And so on that aspect, back to the example that I was just giving you with Miranda and her house, the cleaning of that house, they were dealing with a demonic entity. For some reason, that demonic entity attached itself to that house. So the demonologist in that instance used holy water, used prayers, and was able to actually get it to move out of the house. He didn't, for lack of a better term, kill it. He didn't get it to cross over because demons won't cross over. He just moved it. And so where it chooses to go after that, it's anybody's guess. But in that instance, after that 8-hour session, the house has been cleared of that energy.
Wow. One last demon question.
Yeah, no worries.
What do you think what's the motivation behind an entity of that nature?
On the demonic side, I think a lot of them appear in locations where somebody is doing something with what I would call the wrong intentions. So let's go for the Ouija board, okay? Because I know that was used in that example that I just gave you. You've got a Ouija board.
It's a big one.
The Ouija board in and of itself is not evil. It's nothing. It's just a board that's sitting there, right?
Sure.
But when you go and start using this with the wrong intentions and you go in looking for something negative, or you're trying to call up something negative and you don't know what you're doing, that's when I think you're opening yourself up and your environment up to bringing in something that's demonic. And I think in that instance, that's what happened. And I think in a lot of instances, that's what happens. You've got people that, want to try to be scared on a Saturday night and they start dabbling in things that they shouldn't, or using different tools that they shouldn't be using in the way that they're using them. And I think that's what causes them to, that's what causes demons to either attach to a location or to a person. Yeah. Like I said, back to the negative energy side, I think those energies are ones that are going to stay with the location because of what it was, like a prison, like an insane asylum, a jail. Those locations that were darker in their lifetime. Essentially, I mean, a prison is not a happy place. So you're probably not going to have happy spirits there.
Right.
So that's how I differentiate between those two.
Have you ever, you talked about a second ago, you guys set that boundary of you're not going to follow us home. Mm-hmm. Have you before, or have you or anyone you know had an experience where something did seem to follow somebody home?
No, nobody
Okay.
on our team, and then nobody that I can actually think of. I mean, you do have stories of, paranormal investigators saying, "Oh, I investigated here, and I think whatever it was followed me home." I have not
Yeah.
personally talked to those individuals, but I know it's a possibility. Like I said, for us, we will go in with the of setting the intention of you're not going to come with us. You're not going to harm us in any way. And I will put out there, we're all Christians as well. So we do say a prayer of protection before we go in and a prayer of protection when we come out. And, we've just been very fortunate that nothing has attached itself to us or has tried to harm us in any way.
Have you ever seen an apparition in any of these experiences? Okay.
Yes.
Can you describe an apparition experience for us?
I've seen them. I've never seen what we would call a full body apparition. To me personally, the holy grail of what I do would be to see a figure and know who that figure is. So, for example, if I see a figure and it looks like Abe Lincoln, I can say, "Oh my gosh, that's Abe Lincoln." That would be my holy grail. The ones that I've seen have either been manifested as shadows, like dark, really dark shadows. Or almost like a quick strobe of light. We've been able to capture two of those, one at Prospect Place in Ohio and one at Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. Essentially, they're just beams of light that I can't explain. I don't know where they emanate from. They just appear and then just leave. So we've captured two of those on camera. We've actually captured 4 different shadow figures at some of the locations that we've gone. The most interesting one has been at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Petros, Tennessee. We were set up in the gymnasium, and actually Miranda was collaborating with us on this one. So it was Miranda Young and her cameraman for her show, Ghost Biker Explorations, and then it was myself, Jenny, and Kim. So there was only 5 of us. So we're in the gymnasium, and we set up some of our equipment. And some of them have lights, as you alluded to on the K2 meter. We also have a device called a REM pod that does the same thing as the K2 meter, but it actually has an audible alarm as well. So it has a red light that sits on the top. And then Miranda was actually holding a camera that we call an SLS camera. And generally speaking, it is an iPad that's connected to a camera that has an algorithm in it. And when you pan the camera around a room, and it perceives a human form in the room, it will put that form as a stick figure on the screen. So there's nobody in front. So we set the equipment in the middle of the gymnasium, and we all step back probably about 15 feet or so, and we've got a semicircle around this equipment. And so we're standing there looking at it, and I see a shadow figure dart right across the equipment, and it actually blocks out the light from the REM pod and this glow balloon that we've got sitting there. And so Miranda actually caught that on the SLS camera at the exact same time. And so then the next sequence we actually caught on camera, it's in my video, you'll see the shadow figure run back across the other way and cut off the lights again. So you actually see something run in front of those and it blocks the light out, which is kind of interesting. So those are the forms of what I would call apparitions that we've seen.
The shadow people phenomenon is probably one of the most commonly experienced apparition phenomenon, I guess, if you go diving on the internet. Would you, I guess you would probably lean to say that those are spirits of people?
So yes, I would say that shadow figures are energy. There's actually one at West Virginia State Penitentiary that's pretty prevalent. A lot of paranormal investigators have seen it. We have not had the opportunity to have seen it yet. But for me, they are that form of energy. Again, if you subscribe to the fact that we are made up of energy and it can't be created or destroyed, I do think it takes a lot of energy for a spirit to manifest as an apparition, which is why I don't think we see a whole lot of them. It's much easier to whisper or something through the night rather than actually manifesting yourself as an entity. But to answer your question, yeah, I think shadow figures are that energy manipulation, and they're just manipulating themselves as a shadow.
Do you guys ever just have like crazy dreams?
Actually, no. I mean,
I would have my light on all night, man, if I went on one of these.
My
I'd have
dreams,
a lamp on for 3 months.
no, my dreams are very vivid, but nothing. I've never had any dreams related to any of our investigations.
Okay.
I will say, since you brought it up, one of the most compelling dreams I've had I would associate it with what we do is my granddaddy passed in 1986, and 4 years ago, I had a dream. And it happened 4 nights in a row. So granddaddy came to me in this dream, and it was a very specific place in this house that he shared with my Nana, my grandmother. And so he came to me in the dream, and it really was more of a nightmare to me because he looked at me, he moaned, and then he walked out through a wall. And so I woke up, and I was in cold sweats. And so it happened 2 more nights. And finally, I was talking to my mom, and I said, the last couple of nights, I've just had this dream about granddaddy, and he's in his office in the house and he's just moaning, and it's pretty freaky. And so just off the cuff, she said, well, just ask him what he wants. And so he came to me again the next night, and I said, Granddaddy, what do you want? And he looked at me and he said, I'm waiting for your Nana. You're going to be getting a call soon. And then he walked out the wall. And about 2 weeks later, we got a call that my Nana was in an accident and she ended up breaking her leg. And they tried to do surgery on it, and she ended up getting MRSA. She was 94 at the time. She ended up getting MRSA and just never really recovered. So she was in hospice for about 4 weeks. And so on the day she passed, and with permission from my family, after about 3 hours after she passed, I looked at my sister, my twin, and I said, I know where she's going. She's going to go meet Granddaddy at the house. And so we grabbed some equipment, and because she had been in hospice for so long, and we didn't anticipate her going back to the house, we had the electricity turned off. So we went to the house, and so we had our K2 meters. We had a gray one and a black one, and we're standing there in the office where it was in my dream. And I said, Nana, are you here? And the K2 meter started going crazy. And I said, to validate, can you just light up the black one? And the black one went crazy. The gray one did nothing.
Wow.
And I said, one more time, can you go to the gray one and not the black one? The gray one went crazy. Black one stayed still. And I said, are you with Granddaddy? And the K2 meters went off. And I said, are you guys happy? And K2 meters went off. And so in my mind, she met up with Granddaddy and they ascended to whatever is next, whatever realm is next. And to validate that, we actually went back a week later and did the exact same experiments. We had the exact same K2 meters. We stood in the exact same spot and asked the exact same questions, and we got nothing. There was no hits on anything. It was essentially quiet. And so, like I said, for me, back to the dream question, it was one of those dreams that I feel I was meant to have, and it was because I was so close to my Nana. It was very peaceful for me because I felt that she was able to meet up with my granddaddy, and they ascended together to whatever's waiting for us next.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
It's an interesting story. I actually like telling it.
No, that's very interesting. I notice on the Soul Sisters Paranormal website, you guys really don't, and I may have skimmed the list and missed it, but I don't really see any New Orleans, any Charleston, or any Savannah. And I thought that was really interesting because those places, if you were a person that was visiting those places often, I would ask, how do you differentiate the tourist trap insanity from what's legitimate or what a legitimate concern would be in those places? Mm-hmm. You guys ever run into just like stories that are, more or less the sort of thing you might hear in a horse carriage in Charleston, but made up by the tourism department kind of?
We have, I'd say the one place we really experienced that was the Lizzie Borden house. For any paranormal investigator, that's one of the places that you really, it's always on a bucket list of a paranormal investigator, and we've had the opportunity to go there. And I'm not saying it wasn't a great experience because we did capture things that we couldn't explain that night. But when you listen to the tour guides and when you listen to other paranormal investigators, they basically make it sound like you're going to sit there and the entire house is going to levitate on you during the night. That's how active it is.
Right.
Again, not to say that we didn't capture some compelling things there. We captured some small children laughing. We captured males' voices that we can't explain. So, we were very fortunate in that respect. But there was to your point, a tourist trap kind of feeling
Yeah.
when you did go there. As far as going to New Orleans and the other places that you mentioned, and Charleston and Savannah, honestly, for us, it's kind of about timing. We all live in different parts of the country, so it's a lot about timing and planning and itineraries and when we can get them to mash up as to some of the locations that we go to. There's been several locations in South Carolina that I've been dying to get to, for lack of pardon the pun. I've been dying to get to.
I've been dying to get
and but we just haven't had the opportunity to make our schedules mesh yet.
I know there's that. What is it? There's a. I think it used to be a prison in the middle of Charleston, but it's also like a school for something. Gosh, I don't know, but it gets on a list of. Of course, Charleston, like the whole city, is haunted, right?
It absolutely is.
Everybody's haunted over there.
Yeah, absolutely. So no, it is on our bucket list. For us, like I said, it is a little bit difficult because we are in different parts of the country, and then also, back to the whole media situation. When you watch a television show, they wrap up everything in 60 minutes. You've got the investigation, you've got the history a little bit, you've got the evidence review, and then you've got the reveal, and everything is in a nice package in 60 minutes. For us, we, like I said before, we have 10 voice recorders, we have 20 night vision video cameras, and when we have that running for 8, 10, 12, 24 hours, that's a lot of footage to go through. So we really only get to investigate large-scale investigations probably about 4 or 5 times a year. Other than that, we're watching video. I mean, pretty much every night I'm watching video or listening to audio in order to produce our videos about the location. And so that's the reason why a lot of it is I would love to go on an investigation every night, but we would really have to change our format with how we document what we do.
Right. You have a lot of stuff to do in post, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of, we came up with that style that we're comfortable with. Again, that very rich history, that very rich narrative of where we go, why we've gone there, and then the evidence that we collected. And I feel that to do that in a very sincere way, we have to go through all of that footage that we've captured, all of the audio and video, to really give it justice. So it is time consuming, but it's kind of one of those things that this is how we decided that we're going to approach this. I mean, I know that some investigators just go in and turn on their live on Facebook and walk through, and that's their investigation. And that's great. That works for some people, but for us, I feel that style really misses the historical component. And so we'd rather, give up the live instantaneous gratification and give a more historical narrative.
I have to wonder with that style too, where everything's so instant, how much the preconception of the person plays into those sorts of things, right? You go in and you're like, this place isn't haunted, see? Or this place is haunted. Oh God, look over there. Right,
exactly. And so I think for me personally, that style kind of loses a little bit of something.
Sure.
But that's fine. I'm not going to disparage any other team for doing that. If that's what works for them, that's cool. But for us, it's a little bit more labor intensive on how we put our videos together.
Right. How did you guys come up with your logo? Because it's a skull that you might see in Mexico around November 1st or so. I'm a Spanish teacher, so I'm just curious what the inspiration was.
Actually, I had a tattoo artist sit down with me, and I had some elements that I wanted to incorporate because we're Soul Sisters. Obviously, we're an all-female team, so I wanted a skull logo because it's different than ghosts and all of that. I wanted a skull logo to represent the fact that we are trying to speak to the dead. I wanted the wings because I wanted something feminine. I wanted the halo to be a little askew because we're not all perfect. We have the cross on the forehead because that's our Christian belief. We've incorporated hearts because I feel this is a labor of love for us. We've got the keyholes in the eyes because we are exploring. So that's kind of how we came up with that logo.
Awesome. What do you guys do in your day life? Like how do you support your habit of hunting ghosts?
Well, we are actually all professionals. We're all very busy. Michelle and Cara, they have their JDs, so they are practicing attorneys. Kim is a high school English teacher. Jenny works at the University of Central Florida as an assistant vice provost. I actually teach classes online as a professor. I've been a professor at University of Central Florida as well as Metro State College of Denver. But right now, currently, I'm engaged in some property management for my family.
Okay. What do you teach?
I taught aviation security and aviation marketing and management. And my background is in criminal justice. So I also taught prosecution and adjudication.
So you guys could mount a defense or a prosecution by day and then hunt spirits by night.
Exactly.
You got it all covered.
Absolutely. That's kind of, we kind of put that into practice.
Well, it's hard to ask this question because you're a paranormal investigator. So if I ask you what your scariest experience is, you guys run towards that stuff. You don't even know what scary stuff is.
We do.
But what is your scariest, for lack of a better word, experience out in the field?
Okay, I'll actually say that. Well, first, let me say, when we do this, I'm more scared of humans than I am of ghosts. So some of these locations are in the not so great areas that we go to. So we were actually at the old Gilchrist County Jail in Trenton, Florida, which is about 45 minutes west of Gainesville. And we've investigated there several times. The first time, it was actually just myself and Miranda Young from Ghost Biker. She and I had decided to collaborate on this investigation. It was just going to be the two of us. And so we were the only people on the property. And so before we went in, the owner said, do y'all carry? And we said, yes, we do. We both have our concealed carry permit. And she said, I highly recommend you carry your guns with you at all times during the night because this is the area that we're in. So
Right.
No problem. That's fine. So we both put our pistols in our holsters. So we had them during the night. And when we walked into the location, it was a jail that was built in 1928. It was in operation until 1968, and it has a very small footprint. It's just 2 stories, but it only has 8 cells, 4 cells on the bottom, 4 on the top, and then it's got a very small jailer's house that's attached to it through a doorway. And the jailer's house just has a little living room and then 2 small bedrooms. The windows have been busted out. There's vines growing through it. So it's a very interesting place to go into. So when we were doing our day tour of the location, again, it's just Miranda and I, and we started capturing males' voices that we were hearing in the moment. And so that was kind of interesting. So when we went in during the night, we set up all of our equipment, and we weren't really feeling anything. We weren't, hearing anything. We weren't seeing anything. So Miranda said, I wonder if they think we're law enforcement because we have our guns on us. And so we said, we decided that we're going to just take our guns off and put it on this cot that was in one of the cells. And so I put mine on the cot, and Miranda was putting hers on the cot. And she goes, I'm putting this down nice and easy. And right behind us, a guy says, good. And then from then on, that the whole night was just pretty much electric. We were getting EVPs. We captured an EVP saying, please help me. We captured an EVP saying, kill them. We were capturing every piece of equipment that night was going off and really validating every other piece of equipment. So for me, if I can label an investigation, a pure investigation, that's what I would call this one, because we were getting EVPs that were validating what we were getting on our K2s, that were validating what we were getting on our SLS camera. So everything that night was just validating everything else. And it was an amazing experience. So I wouldn't call it scary. For me, it was very intense because we were seeing shadow figures darting between the cells. But we had some oh shit moments that night, but it was very, very active and a very compelling experience.
Yeah. Wow. So what do you think ties a spirit? So this is getting into your personal theory, obviously. But what do you think it is that these entities are doing in these locations? Why they're here still after they've died?
Okay. So for me, I actually think that there's 3 theories. Again, I believe that there's something after this. We'll call it the next realm, or heaven, or whatever your religious beliefs are. I'll just call it the next realm. So I think that there's 3 reasons why people have not gone on to that next realm. The first one is they do have unfinished business. They're here for some purpose or some reason that has to get fulfilled. The story of my granddaddy, I think he was still here because he was waiting on Nana. And after they met up together, they both ascended together. So there's no reason for me to go back and search for Granddaddy. I don't think he's there. I don't think I'll get any response because they've ascended together, because his unfinished business is done. So I think that they have unfinished business. The second one is, I think they're stuck. For some reason, they know that they're dead, but they don't know how to get to the next realm. An example of that is we were investigating at Hales Bar Dam in Tennessee. And one of the reports is that there were children underneath the dam. There's a series of tunnels. And in one instance, there was an accident in the tunnels and some kids were killed. They used the tunnels to get to school from one side of the river to the other. And there was an accident and some kids were killed. So we were investigating that dam, and Michelle asked, she said, "Why are you here? Why haven't you moved on?" And we captured a child's voice saying, "I can't, I'm stuck." And so to me, that's an example of, he knows he's dead, but for some reason he can't find the way to move on. Whether somebody didn't meet him or he's waiting for somebody else, that's the reason he's stuck. The third one is, I think that they are afraid to ascend because of the repercussions, what they feel would be repercussions for what they did in life. And I think those are who we're connecting with in jails and prisons and asylums. So to answer your question, for the jail, for Old Gilchrist County Jail, I think those spirits were there because they were murderers. I mean, they were rapists. They were in jail for a reason. So they're afraid of what their punishment in the next life will be. So they're just happy hanging out in the prisons. We like I said, we've been very fortunate in, Brushy and West Virginia State Penitentiary and the Gilchrist County Jail to make contact with different spirits. And I think that's the reason why they are there.
And you said that very intense one was the Gilchrist County Jail. Was that right?
The old Gilchrist County Jail in
Old
Trenton,
Gilchrist. Florida. Okay. And do you have, I know you guys have a YouTube channel. Is the documentation of that one up on the YouTube channel?
It is. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And
awesome.
the YouTube
I'll have to
channel
check that out.
is, it's under Soul Sisters Paranormal.
Soul Sisters Paranormal. There's something on your website I thought I saw where maybe you're working on a book. Is that true?
It is. I use that term very loosely right now. When we built the website, we were very intense on getting one out. But just because of circumstances and everything else, the book is actually just loosely paper right now with notes and different chapters and chapter notes on it. So it's nothing that is anywhere close to going to a publisher, but it will basically be kind of a deep dive into what we do, how we do it, and some of the findings that we found and why we think we found them, some of the techniques that we use and all of that. So it will happen. It's just right now sitting in a spiral notebook.
Sure. Some of the language you use to talk about spirits is, electromagnetic energy or just energy. Do you or anyone on your team ever dabble with meditation or anything on that end that also uses that same term to basically describe the same thing, but in living people?
Not really. As I said before, we really come at this with a more scientific approach.
Sure.
There are teams that have mediums or psychics or people like that profess to have those skills. We don't. That being said, I do have a twin, and she and I have, I think, a deeper connection than other siblings would. She and I...
You'll have the whole twin thing going on.
We do. We have the ESP going on.
Yeah.
We've always been close. I mean, she's my best friend, and she's one of those people that I will, I talk to her 4 or 5 times a day. That's how close we are. So we do have that type of connection going on. I think what we do come at this with, aside from the research element, is the fact that we are an all-female group. That's kind of rare in the paranormal community. So we all are female, and we all have that, what I think is the empathic side. Not to say that we're empaths, but we come at it with an empathic approach. We don't go into our investigations with bravado. We don't go in to provoke. We don't go in, thumping our chest saying, throw the chair at me, or I'm not going to believe you're here. That's not what we do. I mean, when we go in, we legitimately say, and you'll hear it in every episode, can we tell your story? We want to tell your story because we feel that connecting with these spirits on a human level, if you will, because if we subscribe to the fact that we believe that all of them were at one point human, the basis of the human existence is we want to be acknowledged. We're social creatures. We want to be included and acknowledged. And so I feel that carries over into the spirit world. So if we
Right.
can acknowledge them and say, I want to know your name. I want to know when you lived. I want to know your story. I feel we've been very fortunate to get compelling responses because we take that approach. And so, like I said, we're not going to go in and say we're empathic, but we go in with empathy.
Right. Not that you're like supernaturally empathic, but that you're approaching it from an empathetic point of view.
Exactly.
Well, this is all amazing. Very fascinating stuff. I never thought that I would run across someone who is a paranormal investigator doing this podcast.
Hey.
But I'm very glad that I did, and I'm glad I found you on Pod It. I know a lot of people on there that hit me up. It is great. Some people that hit me up on there are like just trying to sell business stuff. By some, I mean like most of them so far. So when I saw this one, I was like, heck yeah, we're gonna go for one that sounds really interesting.
Well, I'm glad you did. I've had a great time speaking with you today.
Yeah, it's been great. I'm gonna ask one last question,
Sure, absolutely.
and then I'll let you go. If somebody suspects that they are in a haunting situation, there's some activity going on at their house, what can they do to start addressing that situation properly, or get an investigator in there or something?
Well, honestly, the first thing that I would say is get a voice recorder. Just go on Amazon. They're like $30. Just grab a voice recorder, and during the course of your day, just hit record. And either go about your day or ask questions. Start asking questions. What's your name? Are you here? Can you see me? And see what you get. When people call us and say, "Hey, I think my house is haunted. Can you come and help?" The first thing I do is I hand them 2 of our voice recorders and say, "Here, let's try this, because you know your house better than I do. You know the history of it better than I do. So while I'm doing my back research on it, I'm going to hand you these 2 voice recorders. Take them for 24 hours. Hit record, and we'll see what we get." And so that's the very first thing that I would recommend. If you feel like you're not getting the answers that you're looking for, you can absolutely reach out to paranormal investigators. It sounds weird, but it is a very large community. If you just Google paranormal investigators in Florida or Georgia, whatever state you're in, you will come across a directory of paranormal investigators. I will say, if you're looking for a paranormal investigator, just do your research on them. Personally, I would say see if they have a legitimate website, see if they've gone to legitimate places and captured what you feel is legitimate evidence. Not somebody that's out there saying, let's go stir up the dead or something like that. I'd kind of be leery of somebody who's using their platform for bravado. And I've just used that as a word of caution. But there are some great people out there. And that's what's interesting about this community. There are a lot of teams out there that are legitimately in this for the historical aspect and to further the narrative of paranormal investigations. So just kind of a deep dive into that. And if you can't find anybody like that, just contact Soul Sisters Paranormal on our website, and we can give you a good direction.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kristy, for coming on. This has been really interesting. I have no idea what to think, but I'm open to all of it. I think it's all phenomenal.
And we get that a lot, because people say, well, I don't know what to think. I don't know what to believe. And my answer to that is, I'm not trying to convince you. I'm not trying to convince you that a place is haunted. I'm not trying to convince you of ghosts. The only thing that my team does is we go to these locations. I tell you where it's at. I give you a very historical based approach to it. I tell you how we did our investigation, and I give you evidence that I can't explain. If somebody wants to look at our investigations and say, well, I can explain that, I would love that dialogue, because if we can find an explanation for it, that will just enhance our investigations for the next one. But barring all of that, these are things that I cannot explain, and I leave it up to you to determine what you want to believe with it.
Yeah. Do you feel? I know I said I was wrapping up, but one last
absolutely. I love
here,
this
because I just thought of it. Do you? I've wondered. I've practiced some meditative stuff and experienced a couple things that are just like, I like I said, I don't know what to think about hearing what you're saying. I'm saying there's crazy stuff I've experienced with my own senses that I don't know what to think about. And I've wondered before if, as time progresses, our tools will get better at measuring those things, and we won't have to rely on such but we'll be able to get more scientific approaches to these things. Perhaps, I don't know. Like you're saying, if the electromagnetic part is part of it, I wonder if we'll eventually get to a point where we'll have instrumentation that's more sophisticated for viewing or understanding that sort of thing.
I think perhaps, there are people that are dabbling in it right now that are in the paranormal community trying to come up with different tools. Like I said at the start, for me, the EVPs, just the basic voices that we capture on our voice recorder are just extremely compelling. But there are people that are trying to get more sophisticated with their equipment behind this. But for me, I personally don't think we will know these answers until we're dead. I don't think it's something that we can fully explain or comprehend. And I think that's okay. I do. I think that's okay. But I think what we're doing and the things that we're finding is giving us a glimpse that there is something after this. I mean, for me personally, if I were to think that, one day I'm just going to close my eyes and just cease to be, that my energy isn't going anywhere, that I just stop existing, I would be horrified of death. But the things that I've seen and heard and felt, and I mean, in some cases smelt, they're extremely compelling. And I've really, gained a better perspective and awareness that I do think there's something after this. We're going somewhere after this, whether it's this close to the veil or whether it's, a universe away. I can't say for certain, but it gives me peace of mind, really, that there is something next.
Awesome. That was episode 7 of ConverSapien. Thanks again to Kristy from the Soul Sisters Paranormal team for coming on and talking about paranormal investigation. Super interesting stuff. I will see everyone next week on Monday. See you then.